What's going on, Soul Nation? Ginger Prime here, and we're going to be talking about something that I think is a little bit controversial, but we're talking about it not for the drama's sake, but essentially because it relates to the industry, and I'm honestly curious about your opinion over this topic. If you guys haven't seen, NBA 2K21 priced is actually $10 more on Xbox Series X and PS5, and this is leading some to suggest that the next generation consoles are going to have a starting game price at $70 rather than the current existing $60 that we've been experiencing probably for the last 10 years. I'm about to say 10 decades, for the last 100 years. No. So originally, I remember when they made the shift to 60 from 50, that actually was controversial at the time as well. It was frustrating as a gamer at the time, especially one who had to go mow yards for his games. That was obviously like, well, more yards have to be mowed to be able to pick up that game. And so the question is obviously going to really fall into your opinion. Is $70 going to be a deal breaker to the game, or is this something that you see the industry shifting to naturally over the course of time? We've got some tweets that I want to cover as well, some interesting discussion being had over this topic on Twitter, but I'm going to cover this article in full just so we can set the context, and then hopefully we can have a really cool discussion in the comments below about this. But it says NBA 2K21 will have a recommendation price of $70, 64, I'm assuming euros, apologize, when it comes to the launch on PS5 and Xbox Series X this year. That's $10 more than the PS4 and Xbox One version, which is still going to be launching at basically $60 here US. This is the first hint that the next generation may lead to higher software prices and development costs, and they're expected to increase with new machines. The Xbox One and PS4 versions are due out September 4th, with the PS5 and Xbox Series X edition set to launch alongside the new machines later this year. 2K says the more expensive versions have been built from the ground up for next generation consoles. The issue around game pricing was discussed by former PlayStation exec Sean Layden, saying that last month he told attendees at the event, "It's been $60 since I started in this business, but the cost of games have gone up by 10 times. If you don't have the elasticity, the flexibility on price point, but you have a huge volatility of the cost line, the model becomes more difficult. I think this generation is going to see those two imperatives collide." Leiden also said that the solution for rising cost development was to create shorter games. And I've seen people talk about the shorter games aspect, especially when it comes to AAA titles. And honestly, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. Love to know your thoughts about it. I think if it's a full idea of a game, not like it delivered in parts, but we can talk about that in Final Fantasy 15. NBA 2K21 has multiple versions, including one that crosses the two console generations, and the Kobe Bryant-fronted Mamba Forever Edition is available across all platforms for $100, and will feature a host of extra digital content in addition, and anyone who purchases this version can go to the standard version of the game and the other generation at no cost within the same console family. So if you buy a PS4 Mamba Forever Edition of the game, you can get the standard version on the PS5 as a part of that package. NBA 2K21 is a monumental leap forward for the franchise, and stated to President Visual Concepts Greg Thomas. And then we're combining all of our experience, blah, 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 blah. So game industry obviously tweeted out the article, and we're seeing some different conversation going on here. BitBopper says, "This has actually been a long time coming, sadly, as the standard price for games increased from 50 to 60 back in 2005. Okay, so a little bit more than 10 years with the 360, and since then bigger games have only become more expensive to make, but the price of games never went up to account for the increased budgets." Zoila, in this case Night Queen, says, "No, it hasn't, because people's wages haven't increased." And so that's kind of a counter argument there. Obviously, especially in the midst of this insane year that is 2020, a lot of people have been hit and impacted financially. A lot of people, like when we talk about just the theory of the price of the consoles alone, gaming has to be accessible from a price point to be able to draw in most consumers. And this is where I think when we look at the next console generation, Microsoft has the best benefit just on paper. I'm not, like games aside, that can always be a debate if you want to have a console war debate in the comments below. Honestly, I don't care. Don't care about the console wars. But at the end of the day, you have Game Pass. You got services like Game Pass. If they can come in at a reasonable price for the next generation, overall, I think, especially when money is tight, gaming is the best value of entertainment for the dollar when it comes down to like a movie or things like that. And obviously nowadays, when we're seeing concepts with Twitch and even Facebook gaming and YouTube, like gaming in and of itself is more and more and more prevalent, and it's only going to become more prevalent as well. And so barriers for entry on this is going to be important. We bring this up talking about like Phantasy Star Online 2. That's a free-to-play game. We've seen a lot of free-to-play games or games being bundled as a part of these Game Pass and different services. And this all leads to, I think if I scroll down a little bit, I think somebody, Richard here says, and they're all still going to be full and crammed with microtransactions. Obviously a very contentious point within gaming, as we can kind of remember the good old days before you had to keep buying the stuff that's already included on the disc when it comes to your games. I think what we're seeing here is the start of the biggest shift in gaming history, and we can't really know how it's going to end. I can't go 10 years ahead in the future and say, guys, this is the good stuff and this is the bad stuff. But overall, when we start to see this shift, we've seen this shift to digital over this last generation. We're seeing more shift into kind of these service model games, whether they're free to play or they have an upfront cost. I think increasing the price to $70 isn't shocking. It's not something that I'm personally excited about, but I don't remember spending $60 on a game this last generation. I'm a sucker, I guess. Like, I'd always go get the version that also included any potential DLC that came out until Game Pass came out. And especially like with games like Gears 5 and other games of that nature, I've been able to kind of just enjoy the entirety of the game itself, with the exception being Minecraft Dungeons, which you have to purchase the DLC. So I went ahead and just bought the whole, Hero edition, and that's just my choice to do with that. So I think what we'll start to see is more hybrid models. And the question about the games and the cost around those games is that the concern I have is for more of those single player driven narrative experiences. And it's going to find its place. I don't think they're going to go away. But what you're going to see here, especially with games and game costs and game streaming, the concern here is that that's going to be where people put their money. That's where the development companies start putting their money, because let's say they can put it out for free and so that they can get a bunch of people to play it, microtransactions aren't going away and they're only going to become more prevalent. Otherwise, you're going to see more things tap into subscriptions like Game Pass, PlayStation Now, and more. I'm not opposed to a $70 game if that's what they need to sell it at to be able to make those kind of quality games. I've made this argument for a long time that one of the reasons I hear people complain about microtransactions and then also say they won't pay more than $60 for the game, I've always kind of felt they're arguing against their own self-interest. You want more single-player games, but you're unwilling to pay the company the money for it. And usually the reaction I get when I make that argument is frustration, because they're like, Brian, you don't get it. This is what I have to spend. And I want to be very empathetic to everybody's different financial situation. I've been in positions in which that I can't pay for any subscriptions. I'm just out of the entertainment game because I don't have that kind of money. I've been paycheck to paycheck in the past, and hopefully will never be there again. But I've seen my family go through it, even when my dad was an adult and we were kids. Like, life can hit you sometimes really hard in the gut. And so I want to make sure that there's empathy. I'm not sitting here trying to be judgmental about, the price of a video game. But what I see happening is that if the baseline price isn't supported, they're going to shift. Companies are going to shift where the money is. And that's what I mean by it, is that if we can't afford to have a single player game and it come out at $70 or $100 or whatever that price point is, so that they actually can continue to make these investments, when you look at investing as a strategy within a lot of these companies, there are exceptions. Like Nintendo will just do whatever the hell they want whenever they want to do it. That's not them, and that's one of the strengths they bring overall to gaming, because they're going to ones who are going to take risks for the sake of fun. But that's just my personal take on them. I've got issues with Nintendo too, so they're not completely off the hook. However, when you look at companies like EA, Activision, the big companies that have a lot of money in these games, they're going to look at what they feel is going to have the most return on that investment, because these games are risky. When a game fails, like Anthem, there's a lot of money that can be lost in that. There's a lot of goodwill that is lost in that conversation and in that discussion among gamers. So I think their industry is going to be shifting over the next 10 years drastically. And I think if they decide to start with $70 games, I think people ultimately will adjust, or you're going to see a bigger push more to that subscription-based setup. Like, okay, especially when you look at NBA 2K as a great example of this. These annualized games that really don't bring much to the table other than just a few updates. Something a patch could literally handle if you own it. maybe what they'll end up doing is pricing themselves out of this this cycle. Maybe they can hit a price point where everybody's like, you know what, I'm fine. NBA K220, you know, it's just fine. You know, I've got that game, and then I can keep playing that for 5 years. Ideally, I'd like to see them shift that model. The reason why they don't and haven't is because it's just too much money. Year over year, the sports games, they sell so well and so much. It's like your yearly expansion cost for, you know, a couple of minor changes that could easily have been pushed out to you in that regards. But that's what I would get me back on playing maybe a sports game if they decided to go into that games as a service model, because no other type of game I think would benefit from that rather than the sports, because that's how sports are baked naturally into our society. The other side of this, and the cynic in me also wonders, is that with sports most likely not coming back this fall, maybe even in the spring due to all just the world issues, that they could try to take advantage of people who are excited and have money and to get the new console, and also like fill in that gap in sports content. So regardless, those are some of my thoughts. Obviously, this is news that's breaking. It's interesting to be discussed and to cover, and so I'd like to know your thoughts, any and all, in the comments below. Just remember, just to love each other, respect each other in that regards. You don't have to respect the argument, but at the end of the day, we're all gamers. We all love games, and you know, this is just something interesting, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to think. Anyway, I got to get this video out. I'm going to be over on Twitch covering the Outriders presentation today. Square Enix is showing that off today here in a little bit, so I'm going to be live reacting to it. Hopefully, you can come hang out over on Twitter. No, in this case, Twitch. Dagnabbit. Hopefully you I see you over there. Otherwise, I hope to see you in my next video. But until then, take care. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. This video is sponsored by me. If you guys like podcast and long form content, I hope you check out Ginger Gaming Radio. Link will be in the description of this video below. So if you're still watching this video, thank you, and check out the new channel for more content, and hopefully you enjoy. Thank you.